Hi guys. Happy I think it's Thursday, right? I think we've been cooking for several days already. So I am Mary, Chef Mary, CBD Chef Mary. I'll say what my grandmother always said. Don't care what you call me as long as you call me, right? That's what she used to say. And don't call me late for supper. So I'm really excited that you guys decided to show up today. It is Thursday at 1 o'clock, and we are live with Nugtopia. And we are here today specifically to share recipes. I am, but to talk about Canna moms and the amazing job that they do raising their Canna babies. We are so excited about the chance to get to talk with them later in the show. I think they're coming on later today. And then at the end of the day, there's going to be a silent auction. And that silent auction will have all kinds of different things. I believe that the list of stuff is at nugtopia.com, also Ganja Beach. So check them out. See what kind of absolutely amazing things. Hey, Carrie, I see that you popped up, so that's cool. But generally, you guys, I can't see the chat as much. So if you need something or want to know anything, let me know. I'm going to start out by doing a puff puff and a hey to everybody. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. And I have on my Wonder Woman Nugtopia shirt today. I wanted to tell you guys that Nugtopia is more than just nugs and absolutely cool nuggets and cool shirts. Check out Kyle and Cole Trent and Trent Galleries. You'll be absolutely amazed at all the different options. And follow them on Facebook and on Instagram. Like last weekend, Cole did a surfboard. It was so cool. No nuggets on it. It was all very tropical. And he does a lot of personal paintings in your space. So check him out. If you're looking for something really cool on the wall, he may be your guy. And the things that are offered by Cole Trent Artist Management, printing of your art, different things like that. So check them out as well. We're really grateful for their ability to give us this platform to talk about Canna moms, for me to get to share recipes with you guys, and for us to have fun together. So today I've got several different recipes I want to share with you. I talked about appetizers last night, right? We're going to talk about appetizers and munchies and things you can keep around the house. But before we get started on that, I wanted to show you what the cake looked like that I pulled out of the oven last night. Now remember, we did the cake, it was upside down, so we layered, the first layer was the caramel at the bottom, right? The brown sugar and water, and then we added the oranges, put a couple of cannabis leaves on, and then we put our batter in, and we baked that at 350 for about 45 minutes. So I chose to use a square pan. Remember, you can also use a round pan, but it needs a single pan, so no 9 by 13. You need to stay 8 by 8, or you need to go an 8-inch round cake pan or an 8-inch round spring form pan. Remember, 8 or 9 by 9 or 8 by 8. So I wanted to show you how abso-freaking awesome looking this cake is, right? Can you see that? I am so excited. I can't believe it's actually staying. So you can see the caramel layer here. It's a little soft because I put it in a Ziploc bag. So if you want to and you want that caramel layer super crisp, you can just run this under the broiler for about 3 minutes, and that will not just crisp up the brown sugar part, but also crisp up the citrus as well. You can still see the citrus, and it cooked down really nicely. And if we look real carefully on the side right here, you can actually see the place where we put the cannabis leaves in between the citrus and the batter. So thanks, Carrie. I think so too. I'm really excited about it. So the way that I would serve this, if you're going to do this cake and serve something like this, the easiest way to do it is go ahead and cut your slices, put them on a plate, and then dust it with powdered sugar. That way that powdered sugar will still make it to the table and add just a touch of sweetness to the edge of the cake. I can't wait for you to see what it looks like inside. I'm going to cut you a piece. Can you guys see this? So I have my powdered sugar. Right? Whoop. Okay, so this is what the cake looks like from the side. You can see a little bit of cannabis on the edge, right? But you can see the air pockets. It almost to me looks a little bit like cornbread, but a little lighter. And I learned, right? Smaller bites. Mmm. Oh my God. So the first thing I get is the citrus, right? Because we've got the citrus on the top. And remember, we put the zest in and that squeeze of orange juice from that fresh orange. Oh my God. So I'm getting all of that. And you really don't get the cannabis and you don't actually get the olive oil flavor. It's really just a nice, very light cake. It cuts a little dense, but the flavor is light and it chews really light. Oh my God, you guys. The mango yogurt keeps it moist. This is really good. And I really hope that you guys will share this recipe and give this a try. Remember, it is super, super easy. I'm going to show you the cake again, right? Super easy. Remember, it's put your wet things in one bowl, put your dry ingredients in another bowl, put them both together, and then pour it in your pan. So super easy recipe, great cannabis olive oil recipe. So since we're talking about cannabis olive oil, I'm going to move this over to the side for a second. Which brings me to my quick reminder, my vanity plug, right, you guys? I'm so excited about this cookbook, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. I'm sure a lot of you have already bought it or reserved your. Wow, I don't know what happened there. Make sure that you sign on to ganjabeachmedia.com and reserve your copy. If you get reserved copy now, it's only 20 bucks. There's 50 or more recipes in here. I wrote them all. There's cannabis in all different forms in a lot of these different recipes. So you have cannabis concentrate, cannabis butters, cannabis oil, cannabis tinctures. And sometime in January, I'm so excited that I'm going to work with Ganja Beach and we're going to do like hang out and cook dinner together. So you guys stay tuned. Make sure you're on the mailing list. If not, PM me or DM me or throw your information in the chat so we can get Gabe or Kyle or Cole to put the information in there. Thank you, Carrie. I'm so excited. I can't wait for you guys to get this cookbook. I worked so hard on it. I'm also incredibly blessed that we're going to have some Nugtopia original art in the cookbook. So that's one of the coolest things that I can think of, right? Who gets that? So I was really lucky to do that. And then some great photographs that we'll take of some of the dishes. So I want to get back to olive oil since that's kind of the vein that we're talking about. Remember, I talked to you last night about all the amazing things that olive oil can do for us and all of the amazing things that olive oil brings to the table. So I thought I'd try to create a couple of other different ways for you to use your olive oil. So remember, as we were putting the cake in, I was pulling the bread out, right? So this is an olive oil quick bread. It's not anything that has to rise or anything like that. It's a simple recipe, just as easy as that, but it's going to be a bread with rosemary. And remember, I added some lemon zest in here. So I'm going to cut this open for you in just a second, but I also promised appetizer recipes. So one of my favorite things to do is to dip my bread in that yumminess that they bring, you know, like especially at Carrabba's and some of those places where they come to the table first and they bring that awesome fucking look of a bread. It's all warm and all and wrapped up. And then they bring you this bowl, right? This bowl kind of looks a little like this. Not exactly, probably a little flatter. But today, the first recipe that we're going to make together is going to be the herbs that go together that you'll be able to pour your infused olive oil on top of and then make your dipping sauce. So we're going to have cannabis bread and we're going to have cannabis dipping sauce. So I always make this recipe ahead and I keep it in a container in my, can you see that? In my pantry. I'm almost out. So I'm so glad that we're gonna make it. Also, what I love about this recipe is it is super easy because it's the same amount of every single thing. It's a lot of dry ingredients that go in the bottom of your bowl, as you can imagine, a lot of herbs and stuff, which we have right here. And so, believe it or not, for today, we're gonna just do a single recipe, which is 1 teaspoon of all the different ingredients. So I'm gonna read them to you and give you a minute. And if you're at home and wanna try to make this alongside me, take a minute and grab some of these ingredients. So you're gonna want red pepper flake, black pepper, oregano, rosemary, basil, parsley, garlic powder, salt, and a little fresh garlic if you have it. We're of course going to use our infused olive oil. And if you want to start your dinner out a little lighter, use your regular olive oil or mix half and half, depending on your guest and who you're serving. Because you can always keep your mixture like this in your cupboard and then grab it when you need it. The other thing that we're going to add today is decarbed cannabis. It's a perfect place, you guys, to add your decarbed cannabis because it's going to mix in with the rest of the spices, and you can begin to use that decarbed cannabis just like you would dried parsley, dried oregano, dried basil, dried thyme. It really is a very useful herb that's meant to be used in the kitchen and in the food that you have. So remember that and think about that. Today our ratio is 1 teaspoon. So I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of dried cannabis. Can you guys see this? Yes? 1 teaspoon parsley. 1 teaspoon, I'm going to go a little light, crushed red pepper flake. Did my voice squeak with that? Okay. 1 teaspoon of rosemary. Remember, this is all the stuff that's wonderful at the bottom of that dish. When you go to an Italian restaurant, you get that yummy, there's our basil. The spices smell so good. There's our oregano. Yum. I'm going to do fresh black pepper. A little Himalayan sea salt. That's everybody, right? So we just threw everybody. Oh, my garlic powder. You can also add onion powder if you like a layer of that onion flavor. That's a nice way to do it. Also, granulated garlic and granulated onion are a great way to go. Please try to stay away from onion salt or garlic salt. You can choose how to add salt yourself. Why pay for salt in a spice? So just go straight for garlic powder or onion powder. And then we're just going to mix all this up together. Can you see that? I got a couple of little nuggets of that. Let's see, what is that? That's going to be the garlic powder. So I'm just going to squish those with my thumb and get them to just dissolve into that. And there you have it. Super easy, right? 1 teaspoon, and probably all this stuff is stuff you've got in your pantry already, right? We've already got oregano, we've already got parsley, we've got garlic, right? How friggin' cool and easy is this? So, now we get to have fun. And I'm going to use, it says 1/4 of a cup of olive oil, so I'm going to use 1/4 of a cup, and I'm going to do half regular olive oil. Oh, come on, really? Huh? And the other infused, right? So this is the olive oil that I made in the crock pot after I decarbed it. All right, so It's really simple, you guys. You've seen them do it at the table, right? We're just going to pour this absolutely beautiful cannabis olive oil all over these herbs. Let them just soak in there for a minute. Actually, I'm going to add a little bit more cannabis olive oil. I wish I had a sideways camera, right? So I'm just going to kind of do that. Can you guys see that? And I'll take a picture of it. So what I would do if I was going to serve this, right, easy appetizer, you've made this bread. It took about 5 minutes to put this bread together, you guys, right? Dump your wet ingredients, a couple of eggs, some olive oil. You've got rosemary, you've got lemon, and then now you've got this absolutely awesome dipping sauce that you made yourself. So you have cannabis in here in the oil, and you've got hemp seeds in here for protein. Now you've got cannabis in here decarbed, and you also have cannabis in here as oil. So I want to cut this bread so you can see what it looks like. Let's do that. I'm trying different angles to figure out a way so you guys can see everything. Is that better? Okay. So. Oh, nice. Okay, it cuts a lot like banana bread, which is really kind of interesting because it's so not banana bread. And I'm going to drop that bigger than shit, so I'm not going to do that. All right, you guys, so first we'll look at the bread, right? Isn't that beautiful? So rosemary from the backyard, right? Or from your garden or from your next door neighbor's yard, right? Rosemary, super easy to grow and absolutely wonderful for you. Remember, rosemary is one of those things that is an entourage effect with cannabis, right? And helps for your brain. So I should probably eat a lot more rosemary. And then remember, I just grated some lemon rind in here. So we have hints of lemon. So we got the citrus, which is also absolutely perfect, right? So all the things that go with cannabis, including cannabis, are in this bread. So easy to serve this to your friends, easy to serve just like this. You can certainly put the loaf on the table, cut a couple of pieces, right? And always when you do bread, you guys use a serrated edge knife. Let that knife do the work for you as it slides through. I would cut the bread maybe in little threes like this because you're going to want to get enough oil as well, right? And you can just cut a couple of those, surround them on the plate, right? So then you've got a couple of slices, and then everybody's got the ability to dip and dip some more. And believe it or not, I'm going in. So I put a little bit of fresh rosemary here. And you know, this is the rosemary that I added to the bread last night before I baked it. So I did drizzle some cannabis oil on the outside of the bread before I baked it to hopefully keep the olive oil from, from the rosemary from drying up so much. Oh my God. You can definitely taste, sorry guys. Smaller bites, Mary. You can definitely taste the cannabis and the olive oil in the bread. But it's really nice. And it goes so well with the lemon and the rosemary. Makes the bread very earthy. The texture is a little, I don't know, it's kind of like cornbread, but not. But I'm guessing that's because of the oil, right? Oil and egg, right? So when I make my cornbread, I make cornbread with cornmeal, egg, and oil. So that's probably about the same. This is flour, egg, and oil. And I love the herbs and the dipping. I'd let it sit for another 5 minutes or so before I dip again. Sorry, guys. The recipe for the dipping sauce is in that cookbook. Yeah. So if you haven't pre-ordered the cookbook, grab one now. I think you have probably another week or so for the pre-orders. And then in January, we're going to hit the street running and start cooking together. All right. So that's a couple of things that we've done together today. I've got a few more recipes if you guys are willing to stick around. I want to talk to you right now about one of my favorite things, bacon. I would be a vegetarian if it weren't for bacon. Truly, bacon is one of my things. I don't know why. I can smell it. When I smell it cooking, I've got to buy it. Or is anybody else like me? I am just that girl. And so if it's got bacon in it, or if we need to get some bacon, I mean, it really is amazing. The flavor that bacon brings and the things that you can do with bacon. I've used bacon in all kinds of things, from wrapping a baked potato in bacon before you stick it in the oven and letting it cook like that, to the recipe that we're going to do today. And today we're going to make bacon, and we're going to infuse it with some cannabis butter, and then we're going to top it with some brown sugar, and then we're going to bake it off. So first thing I'm going to do is turn the oven on, bake to 400 degrees. All right, so that's going to take about 3 or 4 minutes. If you say bacon and cannabis, I'm in love. All right, well, great, because you're going to be super happy about this. All right, you guys, if you guys have been watching me long enough, you know when I put the giant chunks of cannabis and bake the bacon off. And I got a lot of shit for it. So I figured out a different way that we can infuse our bacon and still get the cannabis flavor in it. So what you want to do is get a sheet pan and cover it with foil. And the foil is going to help catch the grease, but also it'll help with the caramelization of the bacon. And then in a separate bowl, while you're letting your bacon come to room temperature, you're going to want to add brown sugar, a little bit of chili powder, and some paprika. And honestly, it's kind of not a recipe. It's kind of by sight, and you have to add the heat based on how much heat you like. But what's going to happen is all of that's going to be mixed together, and it's going to go on top of the bacon, and it's going to caramelize. It's going to be amazing. So I bought a pound of bacon. The way I separated it enough so we can get all the caramel and everything on there, right? So you can see a little bit of the green. Can you see that there's a little bit of a tinge of green on there? All right, so that is the cannabis butter. So in one of our classes, so in one of our classes we made cannabis butter. So basically this is just our infused butter. Can you see? Yeah, smells very cannabisy, looks very cannabisy. So what you're going to do is lay your bacon on your pan. Get your paintbrush and brush the pieces of bacon, right, with your cannabis butter. This is going to do two things. Number one, the cannabis butter is going to melt into the bacon. Not that bacon needs any more fat anyway, but it's also going to help the brown sugar mixture stick and get more caramely. Is that a word, caramely? It is for me. That's probably not a chef term. Please don't call my chef instructors. You guys, I've been cooking a long time. And I had actually had my own wholesale bakery for years by the time I went to culinary school. But there was a lot of stuff I didn't know. And so culinary school at age 40 was really a way for me to learn so much more about the science of food than I had already learned when I had gone on my weight loss journey. So we learned a lot about what goes with what and what makes things work. And I learned to make bread, which I had never been very good at. I was okay on biscuits, but never really good on bread. So I'm going to finish up with these pieces of bacon. So you could literally right now just bake this bacon right now and you would be okay. And you're going to have the infused butter in the bacon. And then if you are a keto person and you are looking for a way to have some things like mayonnaise or other kinds of foods that are a little more generally you can use the fat that comes from the bacon and the fat that comes from the cannabis butter that will be on this sheet, and you can save that and use that to create a mayonnaise. Now, after we've added our cannabis butter, our next step is going to be to add our mixture. And so what this is literally just some brown sugar, a little bit of cayenne. I think I put some chili powder. And you could add cumin, which is one of the things I think I'll add. It's one of my favorites. And if you're familiar with cumin, cumin is the spice that you're going to find in a lot of Mexican food. It's one of the things that I use in one of the recipes in the cookbook for the fish tacos. Oh my God, it's so amazing. But I like cumin because it's very earthy, and it will go really well with the chili and the brown sugar. So our oven is ready. All right, so now I've mixed that cumin in. So basically, and we'll just kind of do this together. All right, hang on. You guys with me? Okay. That works, right? Okay. So you're just going to get a spoon and start at the end. You can use your fingers if you want. And just go on and put that on there and spread it out. And just work your way down your pieces of bacon. Isn't this cool? Has anybody ever done this before? I've seen people say that you can use maple syrup, but I think that cooks a little faster than the brown sugar will, and it'll burn a little faster. So I like the consistency of the brown sugar. And also brown sugar with the cannabis and the bacon is just kind of one of those natural things to me. Can of bacon, mayo, your mind is blown. Okay, cool. Welcome to my world. That's how I cook. And that's how we roll in Mary's Kitchen. So I really believe in having a cannabis kitchen. One of the things that I find with most of the patients that I work with and most of the people that I talk to is, you can't smoke all day long. Well, some people can. But if you're at work and everything, it's hard to try to figure out ways to keep your homeostasis going. And one of the ways to make your medicine last longer is to figure out ways to have the ability to have cannabis in all kinds of things. So from cannabis sugar and salt to cannabis mayonnaise and, salad dressing and barbecue sauce and all those kinds of things. And a lot of those recipes, like for some of the barbecue sauce, and I think I even included a couple of those other recipes in the sauce section. One of my red sauces in the sauce section of the cookbook. But I really believe that you should have cannabis have the ability. How about that? Have the ability to have cannabis in everything in your kitchen. That way you can choose when and how you medicate and how much to medicate. Just like the bread, right? You can choose to have just that bread with no other cannabis at all, and you can only use regular olive oil and no decarbed cannabis in your olive oil dipping sauce, right? You can choose your medicine. That's why I say cannabis is participatory medicine. That means you've got to pay attention to your body. You've got to listen to what it's saying. And then it will tell you time to medicate, too much, not enough, this works, this does not. I had somebody tell me the other day that they really liked a sativa RSO. And when I spoke to somebody that actually makes their own RSO, they were really surprised because generally RSO is not sativa, it's usually indica, right? Because it's for that purpose. So, all right. I'm a little anal about the bacon. So here we go. So we have our bacon and we're putting it in a 400-degree oven. We're going to check it at 10 minutes, turn it around and check it again. It should take 20 minutes, which means we ought to be able to pull it out. I think I'm okay on time, right? You guys were good? Yeah. All right, awesome. So hang on, I'll be right back.
No. This is amazing.
All right. Hey.
I'm on here with you, girl.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Well, I can hear you, but you're kind of scratchy.
Oh, well then that's no good.
Am I okay?
You look great, girl.
Okay, so what I want to do now is while the bacon is cooking, I've got a couple of other things that I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things in my house as a Southern girl that we have all the time is pimento cheese, right? I don't know if you have pimento cheese or not, or if you're familiar with pimento cheese, but my mother made pimento cheese every week. And when I worked at a catering company in Atlanta, they had pimento cheese and they had their own version of it as well. So I thought of a holiday version and I wanted to talk to you about it. I'm going to show you how to make it. I really like the idea of it. Let me grab the cheese out of the fridge and we're going to make some cool pimento cheese. Let's get some things we're not using out of the way. That's one of my problems, right? My kitchen always ends up with stuff everywhere. When I was a kid, it used to drive my mother absolutely crazy. Because even then, oh my God, like at 8 years old, I got my first brownie recipe. My next door neighbor gave me this brownie recipe. I was 8 years old. It was so funny. And I would make my brownies and I would weigh I'd put everything out and I'd have it like Julia Childs and put it in the little bowls and dump it in. It used to drive my mother crazy. I guess because she was the one that always had to do the dishes at the time, right? So it kind of sucked for her. But then I went to culinary school and that's the way you do things. That's the way they teach you how to do things. All right, guys, we're putting pimentos in our pimento cheese. So we are taking a jar of pimentos and we are dumping them in a strainer because we don't want that juice in our pimento cheese. Now, we are going to do a little bit of a twist on a regular pimento cheese. Straight up, my grandmother and my mom's recipe for pimento cheese is basically mayonnaise, salt, and pepper, and pimento and cheddar cheese. So that is like straight up cheddar cheese. So this time I'm going to use a 4-cheese Mexican blend. And since it's Christmas, I'm going to add, okay, you guys know I'm not a spice girl, so I'm adding mild, but you can add medium or hot. So I'm adding these green roasted chilies. So then we're going to have red and green pimento cheese. How fucking cool is that, right? So we're going to drain these. Well, maybe. So we're going to drain these fire roasted. Oh, come on. Fucking cans. All right. There we go. See? Where there's a will, there's a way. All right. So we're going to dump some of these. Let them drain a little bit. All right. So now we're putting in mild chilies. So now we have red and green. We're going to throw our cheese in. This says 2 cups, and it says that this is the Publix 4-cheese blend. So we have Monterey Jack, cheddar, asado, and quesadilla cheese. Okay, so which is probably called queso, right? But it looks more like guajillo to me. But anyway, so yay Publix, thank you. One of the things that I always use when I use cheese in things is dry mustard. It's a Mary thing. I used to read all these recipes for mac and cheese, and all the really good ones had dry mustard, and I looked it up, and it like makes cheesy stuff taste cheesier. So I'm going to put a teaspoon of dry mustard, right, into this pimento cheese. It will make that cheese taste cheesier. Oh boy, now you know why I'm not in the choir, right? Can you say cheesier? Cheesier. All right. Next. This is another secret ingredient in pimento cheese. Philadelphia cream cheese, right? You can add a little bit of this. Will help keep it creamy. We'll extend it out a little bit because this cheese is kind of expensive, and this cheese together can make that go a little further. Also, it'd be absolutely amazing spread on our bread over there. But I've got another idea besides bread, and I'm going to show you in a minute how cool this would be. So if you do not have cream cheese, which has happened in my house before, I don't know about you guys, but I love Laughing Cow. Is anybody else a Laughing Cow fan? All right, so if you have a couple of little cubes of Laughing Cow, you know those cool little triangles, you can actually use a couple of little Laughing Cow triangles in this recipe or in any other recipe where you have cream cheese. So what I'm going to do is just put about a tablespoon of room temperature soft cream cheese into our mixture. So far we have pimento and thanks. We have pimento and we have roasted peppers, right? We have our cheese. I'm gonna add a little bit of cumin to stay on that earthy flavor. Just a little bit on the top, probably half a teaspoon. I always add pepper, salt, which is kind of funny, but that's just habit. I think you have salt and pepper and everything, right? And then in this particular dish, I need a spoon. Okay. And where's the mayo? Boy, you know, you'd think you put it on a shelf to make it easy to find. God, guys, how is it possible for me to not be able to find my mayonnaise? Is it because it's on the shelf, Mary? Or is it just because you're having it? Okay. Sorry about that. So, mayonnaise, whether it's squirt or this kind. I don't have any cannabis mayonnaise, which is kind of strange because usually I do. But all the holidays got away from me and I must have made, I don't know, a bunch of deviled eggs. Did everybody make deviled eggs with cannabis mayonnaise for the holidays? Yes, no? Because why would you not, right? Why would you not share the joy of medicine with your family? All right, so you're just going to stir this up. And you can start to see, well, the cream cheese is a bitch sometimes. And if you want to put it in a mixer or a blender, you certainly can. Food processor works great. But do you love the colors, right? So you can see the colors are starting to come together, looking a little holiday, right? So one of the things that I love to do is put things on unexpected things. And normally in my house, pimento cheese always came served, somebody say it, in celery, right? You went to the Thanksgiving dinner table, you went to the Christmas dinner table, right? And somewhere on that table was a platter, and it had celery all lined up with pimento cheese, right? Did anybody else's mom do that? Grandma, auntie? Okay, well, that was the way it was at my house. So instead of bread, this year I wanted to do something a little bit different. And there are a whole lot of people that can't eat bread anymore, right? Because of the gluten deal. So one of the things I did is I got some potatoes and I took them and cut them into small slices or thinner slices. And then I baked them on my cookie rack, right, my cooling rack. So you have kind of a chip, but not really. So you have these awesome little potato chips or potato crisps that you've made at home. I just put a little olive oil on them, cannabis olive oil, of course. Did them for about 10 minutes, flip them over. No, this is not, this is just, okay, so the recipe today that's in the cookbook is the herbs, right? This is not, this is just, we're cooking. And it's, I don't know, Thursday, and it's me. So I'm just giving you hints and tips of different things that I do and things that I've learned. And if you're watching, you get it. And if you're not watching, you don't. And if you need the recipe or you want more information, email me, text me, DM me. I am happy to share always. But this is the easiest thing in the world. You take a potato, you cut the slice, you put it on your cooling rack, right? Hang on, we have bacon. Ha ha ha. Okay. That's so sad, right? Hang on, guys. Let me show you. All right. Okay, can you see? So it is currently a hot, smoky mess. So what I'm going to do, let's turn this down a little bit.
Bacon!
All right, I'm going down to 350.
That's delicious.
All right, can you guys see that? So I'm going to go down to 350, and I'm going to put it on the bottom layer of the bottom shelf of the oven and give it about 10 more minutes, and then pull it out and let it cool. You're hungry now. I'm so glad. Yay! I hope you'll try this at home. I can smell the cannabis, you guys, from the cannabis butter. That's awesome. And then just think about it. We can save the fat from this and all that juice. Oh my God, man, that would be really nice in some cornbread, right? Or maybe drizzled over some shrimp and grits. I'm a Southern girl, so I can't help it. All right, so I'm going to go just a couple minutes here. All right, so back to the pimento cheese. Anyway, so potatoes, right? We've got all these gluten-free people that can't have bread. Normally, you put pimento cheese on bread or on those cute little celery things, but I got tired of that. I thought that was so, I don't know, my mother. So I took a potato, I cut slices, put them on this rack, put a little olive oil, salt, and pepper, 350 for about 10 minutes. Flipped them over, put a little more olive oil, salt, and pepper on the other side, 350 for another 10 or 15 minutes. And you get these awesome little pieces of edible potato that's also, right? So you don't have to buy something to put something in or on. You've got potato. So how absolutely cool. Spoon, please. So we're just going to take our spoon and get a little of the red and a little of the green and just put that on top of our potato. Right? So then you've got something cool to eat that's a little bit different. Here's this pimento cheese that's not really pimento cheese. It's something different. It's got cannabis in it. Oh, fuck, that's where I forgot to put the cannabis in. Sorry. Okay, so, it's the reason that these are here. I'm a little stoned. Sorry, guys. So this is a great place if you don't have cannabis mayonnaise to add either your CBD tincture. Remember we talked about temperature, 185. You can't go above that with CBD. So now's a great time to add CBD to this, or one of your Pure Leaf, True Leaf, or if you make them at home, one of your own tinctures. This is a great place to do that. Sorry about that. Now we're ready. Now we're cooking. So you have a little bit of cannabis olive oil on here. And now we're going to have cannabis in our pimento cheese. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so back to business. All right, put a little bit more of that on there. And you can see the red and the green. Hang on, I'll show you in just a second. Sorry you can't see it yet. It's a really cool thing. You've got the roasted peppers. And of course, you know pimento are roasted red peppers. So that's such a cool combination, the red and the green. You could also, if you wanted to, just use the totally white cheese, so you could go all Italian cheese. And I'm gonna get some little pepitas, which are toasted pumpkin seeds, and put them on the top, because you always like to have something creamy, something crunchy, and so this will give this a nice little crunch. And these seeds have been done in THC oil and a little bit of sea salt in the oven. So, this, oh, get back over there, is our cute little tray. Can you see? Yeah. Of pimento cheese. So easy to make, right? You can do this. Pick your cheese, pick your sauces, and pick what else you want besides the pimento to go in there. I wouldn't make a sweet version of it, but this version is really nice. I'm going to take a bite of one of these if you guys are okay with that. Okay. Potato, not crunchy. So I might crispy up that just a little bit longer. But the pimento cheese is rocking. The flavors are really nice. Wow. I love the pimento and the mild chili. It's not hot, but it's very flavorful. I think you'll love this. Give it a try. I hope so anyway. All right. So we have bacon that's ready. I'm going to pull that out. Oh my God, you guys. Yum, yum, yumminess. Okay, so I am going to put that right there. Wah, 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 wah. Don't do that. Okay, ready? Hot. That pan is hot. I am not shitting you. Okay, so. So, now can you see? And what I'm going to do is get my tongs. And put it right on this plate like this. I'm going to put them on here to cool. Because the sooner you get them off the hot pan, the sooner they'll cool. Oh, man. That looks great, right? Is it just me? Can you guys see that? Wow. I love it. Okay. Come on, swoosh over. And one more. Wow. Oh. All right. That was great. Yay! Okay, I'm going to put this tray aside and I'll be right back. Because next, we've got one more recipe that I can't wait to share with you. Okay, awesome. All right, guys, so the final recipe for today is going to be with our cannabis sugar. And we love cannabis sugar. It's one of our favorite things to make, and we make it with our decarbed cannabis. The easiest way to make cannabis sugar is when you decarb your cannabis, have your alcohol in the freezer already. And I am not a person that is in favor of using heat to decarb or to take care of my sugar. I'm an air girl and I'm an alcohol in the freezer girl. So the way I do my extraction is I put my decarbed cannabis with my alcohol and I put it in the freezer. usually for about 48 hours. And about 2 or 3 times a day, I'll go in and shake it up just to make sure everybody's still having their party together. At the end of those 2 days, I'll go ahead and strain my alcohol and pour that alcohol on top of my sugar. And then put, oh, thank you so much. Go ahead and put cheesecloth on top of your pan, not touching your sugar, above your sugar, so there's plenty of air that can float between your sugar and the atmosphere, because the cheesecloth is there to protect the cheesecloth is there to protect the sugar from the environment, but it's also there to allow air to get in to dry your sugar. There are a lot of people that would tell you put it on the bottom shelf of your oven and open the oven door and barely turn your oven on, but I've seen too many people who have had hair and other things go bad, so we don't do that. So I encourage sugar and cold. So I'm going to grab the puff pastry and give you a real quick sugar recipe, and then we're going to head out. You won't get to see the finished product, but I'm hoping that you'll make it at home. And yeah, right? I'm going to show you the bacon right before we go. And okay, so let me grab this. Hang on. Yeah, one more. Okay. So you guys have seen me post pictures of palmiers, which is basically an elephant ear, or that's what they call them. And those are so easy to infuse for us. Easy to infuse. You can use cannabis sugar, which is what I'm going to do, but you can also use a little cannabis butter. You can add cannabis tincture, or you can even use a concentrate if you decide you want to do that. And so what I'm going to do is I got bought puff pastry dough. And you're just going to open the package. Okay, please have thought. Yes. All right, and take out one. Oh, really? All right, I can't believe it. These have been like out of the freezer for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. So anyway, I'm going to tell you about it, if nothing else. So what you're going to do is allow the puff pastry to come to room temperature on a sill pad, on something like this parchment paper, something, I don't want to bend it, something that can, where it can just sit and lay out. Okay, very good. We're just going to kind of push it down. All right. So this one we'll use for something else. So this is basically parchment paper. This is basically puff pastry, which is hundreds and hundreds of layers of butter and pastry, unbed butter and pastry. We made it in pastry school. It took like a day and a half. You make it and fold it and fold it and fold it and put it back in the refrigerator and put it back in the freezer and make it and fold it again until you've got just enough of everything in there. But to make our palmiers, which end up being the rolled up ends, and sugar, basically it's such an easy recipe, but most people don't do it. All you've got to do is roll your dough out just a little bit. Flip it over. It's still a little frozen. Sorry, guys. So ideally, this is a little softer and is going to expand a bit. So what you're going to do, the first thing that you would do, first thing that I always do, is take just a little bit of salt, because salt is one of those things that makes sugar do a better job, just like coffee makes chocolate do a better job, right? So if you're making brownies or if you're making a chocolate cake, especially for a lot of people that use a box, if you're making a box mix with chocolate cake and it says a cup of water or a cup and a half of water, use a cup of coffee instead. That coffee flavor is going to make your stuff taste coffee-ier or chocolatey-ier. So anyway, what I do is I lightly put a little bit of salt on here, and then you start with your cannabis sugar, and you're going to drizzle that all over your puff pastry. Wow, I can smell the candies. All right. And so then you roll it in. And then you flip it over. And you do it again. So just a little bit of salt. And I mean a little, just a dash, just enough to bring out the sugar. And then you're going to add your cannabis sugar. First round is always a little light on your sugar. How are we doing on time? Okay, so I got to hurry. So you continue to do this 2 or 3 times, right, until your dough has stretched out. You don't want it to double in size, but you want it to get bigger than it is now. Sorry, guys. I'll post some more pictures. All right, so you just keep rolling and adding sugar on both sides, right? Okay, now you can see it's starting to get a little bigger. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So what's going to happen is the dough is going to continue to grow like this. And then to make that shape that we're looking for, I'm going to do one more bit of sugar, and then we're going to roll it up. Kind of like a joint, but not really, because you're rolling from both sides instead of just one side. And we've all become cone fillers anyway, let's all confess, right? Now, this is traditionally made French pastry, so it's always just sugar and the touch of salt. But there are certainly other things that you could add. You could add a little bit of nutmeg. You could add a little bit of cinnamon. Any of those other things that you might want to add. You can also do a savory version of this, and instead of sugar, use bacon bits and cheese and roll it up the same way, or roll it up as a pinwheel. The key to puff pastry after you've done this is going to be to put it back in the fridge to let that butter get super cold, maybe back in the freezer even, and then make sure it's super cold before you put it in your oven. And your oven needs to be 400 degrees. So, to make the palmiers, what you do is you take one side and you fold it over and over to come to the middle about 3 different times. And I like to make it loopy like that. I know you saw that it looked like it was a big fold. And I like it to be that way because if you smush puff pastry together, not like pie crust, but if you smush puff pastry together, it doesn't give it air to puff out. But if you make sure it has enough room, it actually will puff out. And these layers and layers and layers and layers of butter and dough will puff out, and you'll have an absolutely amazing palmier. I can't wait for you to see these once they get made. So basically, you just keep rolling everybody together until they meet in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up so you can see it. Right, can you see that? So they meet in the middle. And then what I do at this point is I go ahead and fold over with the parchment paper. And just fold it a couple of times. Crimp the edges, and then I stick it in the freezer for probably about 10 minutes just to let that butter get really, really hard again. And then that way when you put it in the oven like a biscuit, you know, the biscuit pops and you get a lot of rise in a biscuit because of the butter. Same thing will happen with the puff pastry. All right, guys, I know I probably crammed a shit ton of stuff in today. Ooh, bacon. But I really wanted to give you guys a good shot at having some cool appetizers and some cool appetizer ideas. The bacon's almost cool. It is super flat. Imagine what kind of cool stuff you could put on top of this bacon, or just eat that bacon just like it is. I really hope you'll try some of the recipes. Check me out at CBDChefMary.com. Facebook is CBD Chef Mary, and no, I think it's CBD Chef on Facebook, and Instagram is CBD Chef Mary. Take a look at Nugtopia. Check out ganjabeachmedia.com and pre-order the cookbook for only $20. If you've got questions or you need any information, I am really always here to help. I'd like to thank Gabe for running the station today. I'd like to thank Kyle and Cole for having me on. And I'd like to thank the Canna moms for what they do every day, because they get up out of bed every morning and they love their kids and they try to live their life. Give from your heart if you can. Go to Nugtopia.com, go to prayforbruno.com. Please give. It's Christmas. I know everybody's tight. The Donald isn't writing me checks anymore either. But if you can give and help a Canna mom, I'd really appreciate it, and they would too. Thanks, you guys. Merry Christmas. Peace, love, cannabis.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Ganja Beach Medical Center, and I am Dr. Lonnie Weiss, and I'm your host for the show. And welcome, Super Gabe Osborne. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm feeling really good. I'm excited. You got a great guest today, man. I'm so proud to introduce the prominent Dr. Michelle Weiner to come in here today and talk with us.
Yeah, actually, I see her. She's in the back office right now.
Awesome.
Let's get her on here. What's up,
Yes,
girl?
yes, yes.
I didn't even know Gabe was going to be on. This is going to be even more fun.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
if you don't like it, I can leave.
No, I love it. I love your hair.
You like it?
Yeah, it looks good.
I did it just for you. I figured out that I'm an artist and I want to be more like The Weeknd.
You really look like The Weeknd.
I bet.
I should have worn my Ganja Beach shirt.
You could have.
Yeah.
Do you guys hear me okay, or is it a little delayed? It's okay?
No, you're excellent.
Nice.
Perfect. It's
This
great
is
to see
awesome.
you. Welcome to our show. Thank you for joining us today. I just want to introduce everybody. This is Dr. Michelle Weiner, a prominent South Florida pain management doctor who specializes in working with entheogenic plants and fungi. She is also a researcher, an educator, does a lot of talking events, and she's a mom on top of that all. I don't know how you have time for all of this. And
I know it's a busy life, but when education is your priority, then it's the passion that drives us all to work this hard, I think.
Oh, it
Amen.
does. Passion is exactly it. So, this is Ganja Beach Medical Center. This is our passion right now, and we're so happy to have you here. Keep in mind, guys, this is not Ganja Beach Nerds. This is not the Ganja Beach cooking channel with Chef Mary. This is us. By the way, Chef Mary, I don't know if you've heard, she has an amazing cookbook. I think over 50 recipes in it, and you can pre-order it now for a 20% discount. Not $25, $20. So great. I just saw her cooking some really cool recipes. That's something that, I just am so happy about to have you on the show. We've talked for a while, wanted to have you on as a guest. So let's go to our guest. For those of you who don't know Dr. Michelle Weiner, well, you already, met her, you know her now. So Dr. Weiner, what is it that you want us to know about yourself and your work? How about that to start us off?
That's a pretty open-ended question.
We don't make it tough here.
Well, look at you, just going right for it.
Listen, I'm a little nervous. You make me nervous, Michelle.
No, I mean that's the thing. I really should make you feel comfortable. We know each other well, and also I'm not a very intimidating person. I think that's extremely important about being a physician, to be honest, is that people need to feel that there's that therapeutic alliance. You know, when patient, that's kind of how my practice has changed. I went from very interventional, doing injections. I'm a pain management physician. And then I just got frustrated with the fact that a lot of patients were still suffering, and I wanted more tools, right? And so when cannabis became legal 4 years ago, I read, I learned, I listened to a lot of videos, I listened to other physicians in other states, and I tried to incorporate this natural plant into medicine. And really the change that has happened is that now I have serious relationships with the patients, and the patients have relationships with the plant. And so it's really nice because it allows them to communicate with themselves and then also to communicate with me in a different way. Like they're more willing to open up. They tell me about, sex life. They tell me about work. They tell me about their relationship. It's not just dealing with the medical condition or symptom they came in for, but it's really the whole picture. And that's really, I'm a DO. I went, to osteopathic medical school. I'm very into the holistic mindset. You can't really just choose one symptom. You have to get to the root cause and treat the whole person. And that's kind of the best part about cannabis, right? It's this multi-targeted plant, non-toxic, that doesn't just poke at, single receptors, but it really works on the entire body, because that's where the cannabinoid receptors are. But the beauty is really that the patients are able to open up to me, and I'm not intimidating, and it's not really about the intimidation, but it's about, if the patient doesn't feel comfortable with the physicians, they don't trust them, if they're not confident, then the treatment plan is not going to work, right? Like this
That's
morning, I
right.
was in Boca with Sherry Kaplan, you should have her on the show. Actually, she's a mental health clinician, and she does a lot with botanicals and terpenes. And we had a patient together, and the patient had fibromyalgia, but the energy in the room was so intense. And I really hope the patient never watches this, but her energy was so intense that I had to actually talk to her about how she was making me feel. She was a chronic pain patient who I was explaining that sometimes with fibromyalgia, you have, one trauma that follows up with a second trauma, and we get something called central sensitization, where your nervous system is in this heightened state, right? You have this hyperalgesic state. It's like fight or flight all day long. Like PTSD patients have this. And I was trying to explain it to her, and everything that she said back was kind of defending it, right? And I'm like, we're on the same team here. I'm trying to help you. And then I even tried to encourage her to use a little THC to relax. And if you get high, it looks like a negative side effect or impairment, but really it could be in your best interest. And, that really like threw her off. And, obviously she's coming to me for medicine and not to get high. But we like to bridge that conversation, because sometimes they just need to get out of their own head. They need to just have like an open view or change their perspective on what's going on in their lives. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a pain management physician, but I do it in an integrative approach. I'm very much into the whole person and trying to really look at their sleep, look at their pain, look at their mood. And I always ask them, like this patient this morning, I said, well, when did this develop and what happened before that? She had a recent move. There was a lot of changes during COVID. So some new medical conditions came up. So it was kind of like the perfect storm. The problem is they get very defensive because they think I'm trying to tell them to get high. And I'm not. I'm trying to tell them this is going to help you. And in the process, if that happens, it's not such a bad thing.
Right. So you're not in the business to just prescribe people fun, right? Your job is to really narrow down what their issues are and how to go about not just cannabis, but any type of medicine correctly.
Right. It's always using the minimum amount of anything to get the best results. And why not use a natural option over anything synthetic pharmaceutical that's so single targeted? That's the way I look at it.
Right.
You beat me to the punch. That was a question that I was going to ask you. I've had patients recently that in the course of doing my work with them, I do integrative psychology. So they're telling me about all sorts of problems. And if I send a person to a psychiatrist, first of all, there's a 6-week to 2-month wait list to get in. Then you give them a psychotropic. Now, antidepressant takes about 6 weeks to begin working if it's going to work. Or I could tell them to stop on the way home, pick up CBD, or call a person like yourself and quickly get on the medical program and start using medical cannabis with fast results. But they also look at me in the same way that I'm telling them to get high, or worse yet, if it's with a child and this child has now got problems that are not responding to traditional therapies, and we broach the issue of plant-based medicine, again, that's the point I was going to ask. How do you handle that? Do you find that education works alone with those reluctant patients?
Well, a lot of times I just ask them if what they're doing is working, and if it's not, why are they, if it is, then why are they here, right? So if they're
Mhm.
coming to me, usually it's because they're not feeling well, if they're a new patient.
Right.
And so I'm wondering all the things that they've tried and failed in the past. Well, all of those things may be more harmful or have more side effects, and they haven't even worked. So it's kind of simple. We just have to get rid of the stigma. We just have to get rid of the fact that people think you have to smoke the plant, that you're going to be high from it. And then we have to teach them that you can use some THC and still have quality of life even during the day. Because the way they look at it, they wonder, well, I'm trying to get quality of life back, and you're telling me to get high during the day, so that doesn't really seem like a way of me functioning. Like today with this new patient, I told her you can take 2.5 milligrams of THC and use 25 milligrams of CBD and have a 10-to-1 ratio to mitigate the intoxicating effects. Use that during the day, and then kind of work your way up to more of a 1-to-1 ratio. And that's, usually how I kind of bridge them. I just explain to them the safety of TBD, how it can inhibit some of the negative side effects for some people, and then encourage them to use a little THC at night so that they, are comfortable at home. They're always worried about driving, obviously. So we touch on all of these points, but it's for them to, if they're so defensive, first of all, they have to accept that they have a condition. Second of all, they came to me for a reason. So they
Hmm.
have to be okay with the fact that I'm telling them to try something, because usually they say, well, I just want to learn about it. And like 99% of the, 100% of the time they leave, obviously getting their medical card once they feel better. But it's really
Right.
getting rid of the stigma, educating them on different routes, on how to not get high. And then eventually, usually I do it during the follow up, push them to kind of be open to the fact that maybe connecting with themselves in that way would be beneficial. Some people I kind of started on the first one because if I don't see them for 7 months, that's going to be frustrating for them and their loved ones.
Right. Well, I love the way that you use the right questions. You ask them the right questions and you get them to come to that point of acknowledgement. Why are you here then? What brings you here? Is your medication regimen working? And obviously the answer is no. And much to the same point, when patients come to me with complaints that none of the traditional therapies work, and I bring up plant medicine as a different way of restoring balance, it's educating them, it's teaching. We have an endocannabinoid system. Nobody knows about this. Most of the public is totally unaware, and even some clinicians. I find a person like yourself to be one of the, more educated and caring clinicians that really wants to learn. But the 4-hour course doesn't teach you much. It teaches you just what's wrong and how to get a person on the medical marijuana program. It doesn't teach you the intricacies of actually working with the plant, does it? Is
No,
that
I,
something?
I think it's actually a 2 hour course, and when I took it, it was 2 hours. It was about the
Mhm.
history, the law, and not that much else. It's not about the
Wasn't more
medicine.
about liability?
Right.
Yeah, it was more like the legal aspects of cannabis, right?
Right.
It wasn't really about the medical benefits. It wasn't about the routes of administration. It was definitely not about dosing because they don't really know about that. And we've talked about this multiple times, trying to change that. And I know someone who's actually trying to change the course, which would be very helpful because we have probably 2,500 doctors that are certified in Florida, but not that many are actually recommending. So that's,
Right.
that disconnect probably comes from the lack of education and the unbelievable amount of paperwork that we have to do to send in flower forms and extra templates for the likewise conditions. There's so much extra paperwork putting it in the registry, mailing it to the Department of Health. And then there's so much confusion because the way that it works is you put in an order for 70 days with 3 refills. So they have 210 days of medication, and it's per route of administration, low THC versus medical cannabis, amount of milligrams per day. So over time, the physicians just do the same thing for every patient. They give everybody about the same milligrams so that they don't run out. And then we educate them specifically on what to take, the algorithm, how to increase it over time. But the registry it doesn't make sense for doctors or patients. Patients are used to the pharmacy. They're used to, this is my prescription. But the nice thing is it really kind of is a bridge to the discussion of personalized or individualized medicine, because now, even the study that I'm doing, where the study is with seniors or people over 60 who have chronic pain on medical marijuana. And the interesting thing is we ask a lot of questions. Have you used cannabis before? What products are you using now? Did you get the education from the dispensary or your physician? Other medical conditions, other prescriptions you take? But the interesting thing is, well, we want to get information about what they're taking for their pain so that it helps us recommend specific things. And at the same time, I'm interested to see if it's going to be all over the board, because then it will show physicians you can't just take our way of practicing,
Right.
single targeted pharmaceuticals and use that to extrapolate how to prescribe or recommend cannabis to everybody who has pain. Since everybody's endocannabinoid system is different, everybody's, genetics and epigenetics are different, obviously. There's so
Mhm.
many variables there. If someone's used it before, if they haven't, if they work, if they don't, all of these, play a role in how we recommend and what products they're taking. So it'll be interesting to see how people are treating their chronic pain and how different it is based on so many different factors.
Well, clearly you have a wealth of knowledge about the plant and how it works. And that's where I think the lack of education needs to be addressed, where, changes need to come in at the, level where it's part of continuing education to mandate that doctors, because, you're looking at how many states is it now? 47 that we're up to, with marijuana winning the election. It's going to be here, guys. And it's up to us to not do harm to our patients. So if people are using medical marijuana and they're using medical, treatments, it's up to the doctor to understand how those medications and therapies are affected by the use of CBD alone. If you're, using, something for treatment of cancer, okay, and we're giving you something that's going to boost your immune system, what is it going to do to the cancer treatment? If we're working with diabetic people and we're giving them CBD, that also is something the doctor needs to account for. And this is just the simple stuff. There's far more complicated, but the fear also, I've had doctors complaints from patients where there are medical doctors that actually would do harm to patients because of the stigma. They fear that the person is a drug addict if they're using medical marijuana, and they're now not going to give them things that they would normally give to a person who's injured. Let's say a pain medicine for a short duration. Let's say a dentist.
Yeah, that's a great point. I had, 2 points about pain doctors. I had a patient this morning who told me, so her son is a pain doctor, and so her son does her injections for her pain, and then I'm her cannabis physician, right? Even though I'm a pain doctor. So she said, well, my son really doesn't believe in this cannabis. And I'm like, well, how are those injections working out for you, right? And she's like, well, obviously, if I'm here, they're not working well, So it's kind of funny because how, even your own mother is getting injections and telling you it's not working, and then saying I'm using cannabis and it is working, right? So the thing is, people are a little bit hesitant. There's many reasons to not incorporate it into your practice, of course, but there is no reason to not give somebody pain medication because they're using cannabis. And that's a big, the study I did originally was using cannabis as a substitute for opioids, and we found that 20% completely got off all their pain medicine, and then almost 45%, really weaned off. Their sleep improved, even their weight improved, right? So the only way you can really get off certain medications is to use something in addition to what you're doing. If you could get off of something yourself, you wouldn't need the other thing, right? So the way, we always add it, it kind of, it widens that therapeutic potential. It allows for less cravings and withdrawal, and a lot of other, negative side effects of opioids, obviously. But in general, you would have to add it first and then titrate off. So that's a big problem. I have people who come to me that said, I was taking tramadol and getting a urine drug screen at my pain doctor, and I was positive for THC, so they won't give me my meds anymore. And that to me is really unfortunate, because how else you're just you're just cornering that patient into a life of opioids, basically, because you're not giving them the ability to have another option. And there's
Right.
no, there's some interaction with our opioid receptors and cannabinoid receptors, but again, since the cannabinoid receptors aren't even in our brainstem and there's no toxic lethal dose, it's extremely
Exactly.
safe. The fact that they're picking the opioids over the cannabis is very sad.
Well, and that's just, I think, the legacy of the stigma that was brought up in the 1930s and the Tax Act. And this is the misinformation that's been perpetrated because it was institutionalized. And now what I'm saying is to, reverse the institutionalization, force the correct information out there, because it's, from my understanding, and you would probably be able to better answer this question, opiates were never meant for long-term use, not in the
No, that's right.
in the way that they are. They're short-term.
That's right.
Documented, not
You know,
long-term.
we have this conversation all the time in the hospital because I do pain management inpatient also. And there's a scale and it's for mild, moderate, or severe pain, right? So you have surgery and then you get Tylenol for mild. So then what do you get for moderate? An oral opioid. And then for severe, you get an IV opioid, right? So
Mhm.
this scale has really set people up for getting them introduced to opioids very early on. And then when they leave with a prescription for opioids. And initially, for acute pain, opioids do work, but you shouldn't be on them more than 3 days, max of 7 days. After 7 days, you actually develop a physiological dependence to them. So most people are actually exposed to these opioids from their physicians. And that's a huge problem. It was never meant for chronic pain. There's been many studies showing that it's not even effective for chronic pain. What it is it becomes more of this fear of the withdrawal effect. And so there's people that, I mean, there's people I prescribe to that are they're just dependent on this medication. They're addicted to this medication and they don't even know if they have pain or not. They're just too scared to even try to wean off. It's so sad and it's true. It was only meant really for acute pain.
Well, and that's why, I think it's so important for people to know this. And I just saw someone popped up that, we've all been lied to. Yes, we have, because this is anyways, we won't get into that. But the point I wanted to make was, working with people who have addictions. I've done dual diagnosis work for a very long time. And one of my frustrations is methadone program, the treatment where, you're supposed to get on it in order to get off heroin, but not to stay on it for 4 decades. And now you've got Suboxone and things that are the new methadone. And again, I see doctors popping up where they keep these patients on for protracted amounts of time rather than putting them on and bringing them down as the protocol calls for. And this is where I guess I've talked to a couple of doctors who are looking at beginning to use cannabis, medical cannabis, as a substitute for those synthetic opiates. For Suboxone and methadone. What are your thoughts about that?
So, it's really that concept of harm reduction, right? It's
Mhm.
it's always about it's always and people even say that with cannabis. They say, well, so I'm just going to be dependent on this now for sleep, or I'm just going to now take cannabis for my pain instead of these opioids. The thing is, it is harm reduction. There's places where they provide needles to people so that they're safe,
Right.
so it's all about harm reduction. The way I look at it is cannabis is safer than opioids, and it also is helping other aspects of your life, right? So why not choose that, over a synthetic medication that again, it does really affect has so many side effects. They don't even realize who they are anymore. And that's the other thing about cannabis is that we say it's like an amplifier, right? Or like a teacher, as opposed to a lot of the other medications, they just suppress who we are. All these, the antidepressants, everything's built on that biology, physiology type of chemistry is in an imbalance, right? And that's not really the true philosophy. That's not really true science. If it was, then these antidepressants would probably work. But a lot of
Sure.
it suppresses who we are, and cannabis actually shows us who we are, right? It's more of a teacher. It tells us how are we feeling, what medication are we choosing to use,
Mm-hmm.
what ratio, what cultivar, what terpenes are helping us, and it amplifies. If someone's anxious and they use cannabis, it may make them more anxious. If they're in an environment that's very anxiety provoking and they use cannabis, it may make it worse. So it's nice in that sense that like you have to communicate with yourself. You have to be able to have a relationship with yourself and the plants to really use it to the best of your ability. A lot of people use cannabis for years and then they say, oh, it stopped working, or now it made me anxious. It's not the cannabis. It's what's going on in your life. And
Right.
now cannabis is just showing you what's going on.
Well,
And at the same time,
So,
it
so
really
really,
like, yeah.
really quick, I have to agree with her. And the reason is because I once made this batch of RSO, and I had 2 grams of it because I thought I messed up the recipe. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting there and like the walls were moving. It was the first time in my life that I had like an acid trip on cannabis. I mean, but mind everyone, 2 grams of RSO. I mean, what is that? Like 2,000 milligrams that you're putting into
Yeah.
your body?
Yeah, but that's a different reason. That's another reason. So there's a psychedelic receptor, your 5-HT2A, right? One of the serotonin ones that's really your psychedelic receptor that has a dimerization. There's a crosstalk between the CB1 and the 5-HT2A. So if you use enough cannabis, you can actually have a psychedelic experience. So it was probably the 2,000 milligrams of THC that you used that probably put you into that, psychedelic type of experience. But yes, in general, I see what you're getting at.
It also didn't help that I smoked a joint. I also did a bong rip, and I think we used the vaporizer. I had one of those vaporizers, and then all of a sudden I'm just sitting there and I'm staring at the wall and I'm like, why is it moving? Then I looked at the ground, and then there was a weird carpet design, and I was like, why is that moving? And I remember thinking to myself, I have to go home. And then I realized I was home. And I remember sleeping and waking up at some point, and I had I slept like a rock. But when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, it's still not gone. And I went back to sleep. And I remember when I woke up, the birds were chirping. The day was more beautiful than ever. The green was greener than ever. And I was sitting there and I was like, thank God it's over.
Well, so that's a good story to show that more is not better, right?
No, it's not. It's awful.
More
I don't
more
recommend it.
everybody has their sweet spot, and more is not better. Once you surpass that, you start getting worsening of your symptoms and you feel worse, right? And people who actually take too much cannabis, they can have symptoms of the reason why we give cannabis. For example, most of the time they'll actually vomit if they're using too much. So and also, what do you think your endocannabinoid system was like at that time, right? There's endocannabinoid deficiencies, and then there's the dysregulation of an endocannabinoid, and then there's oversaturation of your cannabinoid receptors, and then you have to talk about tolerance and taking a little bit of a break and things like that, and cannabis use disorder and all that. But that's a very interesting example, and I'm sure you learned your lesson not to take 2,000 milligrams, a bong rip, and a joint.
And a vape. Don't forget the
And a
vape. Well, and I gotta say, the other thing I learned is that after doing all of that, I didn't have to smoke for like 2 weeks. I was good.
That's great. That was your holiday right there.
That was my holiday, and then
that was your tolerance break, right?
That's what I considered the tolerance break. No, I didn't want to go back on it. I was very distraught from.
That's what they say about psychedelics. They say that psychedelics are anti-addictive because after you do psilocybin and you have that difficult trip and that whole the whole process, it's like you don't want to do it again, right? Because you got your lesson, you got whatever you needed to get from that experience. So it's a good lesson. That's good. Thank you for sharing that.
Not a problem.
Just a couple of points. Gabe, supercharging by doing 2 grams, not such a great idea.
Not a good idea.
And my carpet's not weird. But Michelle, back to your points about the use of cannabis. I wanted to kind of bridge that into what we just were talking about, the psychedelic aspects. And I know that you work with entheogenic plants and fungi, and how that is now kind of the new frontier for pain management. I wanted to see if we could talk about that a little bit. And
sure, we can do that. Well, I mean, really, I work with ketamine, right? So ketamine is a synthetic pharmaceutical, it's something that was used for many years in the OR for sedation and pain management, and it's what we call a dissociative analgesic. So it allows the person to have pain relief and to somewhat not experience the experience at the moment and the time. So I think what they were realizing was after surgery, they had a different perception of what actually went on. And they realized that it has this ability to have dissociation. And it's not a true psychedelic, but it gives you that kind of outer body experience. It takes you to non-ordinary states of consciousness or altered levels of consciousness.
Mhm.
And really, we use it for pain because pain is in our consciousness, right? The way that we perceive pain is a big component of how we actually feel pain. And so sometimes if we're able to change the way that our consciousness is viewing our pain, then we're able to handle our pain better. So there's a lot of conditions now that we don't really have really great treatments for, and people are in chronic pain. So then we need to resolve the way that they're able to handle it throughout the day. And ketamine does give you pain relief, but only while you're taking it. So these are sessions that we do that we work with a therapist, like we worked before, Lonnie, and it's
Mhm.
really important to have the therapy because it's
Yep.
about the integration, it's about the tools so that they can go into their life and handle this, not just during the sessions or during the time they're doing these sessions. So it's very powerful, very profound. The experiences that these patients have are something that they have to be ready for. They have to be ready to make some other lifestyle changes. A lot of times you'll same thing with cannabis. It's like the catalyst for change. We start thinking about our diet, more movement, journaling, meditation, music, things like that to incorporate into their lives so that there's more of a integration into what's real life going to be after these ketamine sessions. But I really found like it's unbelievable for things like treatment resistant depression, anxiety,
Mhm.
fibromyalgia, a lot of the post-traumatic stress disorder, addiction. I have some addiction patients right now, and it seems to be effective, but I don't do it without therapy. They have to be doing therapy so that they can talk to someone about what they're feeling and seeing in these sessions, and then a plan to integrate it into their lives.
I like that. I was wondering, is that, something that, when you start to look at the type of patient that you're talking about, you said something before that just kind of primed my mind. So I took a couple of notes. The patients that I work with that get to that point of rigidity where they're just not willing to look at things in a different way, whether it's pain or a psychological construct of emotional pain, what I see is that cannabis being in that psychedelic class, but also ketamine and mushrooms and other things like that, it helps to suppress that rigid part of our mind, the ego, or a different term, the default mode network, the different components that make us think in that repetitive or cyclical way. And I guess the way that I had a patient describe it to me that was really neat was that it just kind of turned all that off so that they could see it from a different point of view. And that insight is what we work with in the sessions afterwards. Another point, when we did do those work with patients, what was really cool was to involve tools. So in that state of mind where their resistance was suppressed, to now give them tools to teach them something can work. So your pain can be mitigated by using relaxation skills. You don't need higher levels of drugs. It's you.
Right.
And
And
that's
there's even, people can even get into that state through breath work, right? Like
yeah.
Wim Hof, a lot of people meditate and can get into a similar state or a non-ordinary state of consciousness, right? So
Mhm.
the default mode network is actually really interesting because so it's exactly what it says. It's the default mode, right? So we each have a default mode, which is kind of where we go when we're daydreaming. It's the story
Mhm.
that we've created about ourselves, like our own personal narrative. Who you guys think I am, I pretty much created that, right? The story that I think about you, you created that. That's why I think that. So the interesting thing about these medications is you can dampen the default mode, which means that
Mhm.
your story, your personal narrative, the reason how you got to have fibromyalgia, or the reason why now you're anxious, that kind of dissolves a little bit. And in doing that, yes, you dissolve your ego also. And so therefore you're kind of more open to like putting a fresh coat of snow and kind of creating what you want to create. And by doing these ketamine sessions, they then tell a story about what happened to them during the session. And it's kind of like storytelling, but it's not their actual story, right? And so a lot of times we're dampening the default mode network, we're able to kind of clear that and start anew. And that's what these that's why they're so powerful, because I have a friend that I'm doing it for right now who really suffers from addiction and depression and just kind of goes through cycles over and over. And she's a great friend. And sometimes it's hard to help a friend, but
Mhm.
she's done 3 sessions, and she texted me this morning, I think you saved my life. And I'm like, no, I didn't save your life, right? The medicine was a catalyst. It opened you up. Even her girlfriend texted me, thank you so much. You gave me her back. It's night and day, the difference. And really, it can be a rapid antidepressant, so you feel better right away. And that feeling, because you had some beautiful experience where you're able to connect with something that you couldn't connect with in your normal level of consciousness, is extremely profound. And now what is she doing with it? She's working to get rid of her addiction. She's working to, but it's not sitting in, and I don't want to say this because I'm not compassionate, but sitting in your drama is not going to help you, right? And that there's so much of that. And I always tell her, you're so exhausted because you're ruminating all day on all the reasons why you're depressed, or you're thinking about the future, which is just making you anxious. So you're
Yeah.
exhausted from doing nothing because your brain is exhausted. And
Yes.
need to quiet down those areas, and who can focus when they're in the past and in the future, right? You can't focus at all. So the only way to focus is really to kind of dampen that, and then to be able to understand, okay, now how do I move forward? And that's where the integration is. And that's why when we do these sessions, we're also putting in certain things in between the sessions, like homework, for them to work on, so when
Mhm.
they're done, they have a plan.
Well, I know like MAPS has a very protracted program that they're coming up with where it involves therapy beforehand, which teaches them what to expect, come up with goals, set the right intentions. Then it involves administration, usually with like a trip sitter. Then there come integrative sessions, then another administration, and so forth. I don't know if it has to be that long. I don't know if it has to be that short, but this is where the research is opening those doors. And I think it's people like yourself who are not afraid of the stigma, who are really willing to kind of say, hey, there's something to this, take a look at it. I find going back to just the cannabis use and something that you said, we can achieve these non-ordinary states through other means. For the longest time, there are people who have achieved this with, and Stan Groff talks about it in transpersonal psychotherapy, where he talks about using holotropic breath work, very systematic way of doing it. It comes from the study of indigenous tribes. But looking at what we can do using something as simple as meditation, which focuses on breathing, getting into an alpha wave state and using cannabis to help suppress that resistant part of us. And the insights that we gain are amazing. And what I try and get people to do is when they do that, to use, and it could just be CBD, it does not necessarily have to have THC, but using this and then journaling their insights so that they bring all of that into the psychotherapy. And, it's just coming up with new ways to get people to focus on themselves, not externally, but internally.
It's
Is
like,
that
that's a great point, because people say, well, I can't meditate because every time I go to sit in quiet, my mind goes here, and then I'm thinking I have to go food shopping, and now I'm thinking I have to pick up my kids. And, the whole point of practicing anything is to get better at it, obviously, right? So
yeah.
if you're trying to meditate and you say, I can't meditate because my mind is going here, the whole point of meditation is to bring your focus back, right? It's practicing bringing your focus back. And that's a good point, because both cannabis and these psychedelics talk about neuroplasticity, right? And neuroplasticity and that's why when we do ketamine, they're kind of primed for good behavior, right? So at that moment that they're ready for the ketamine sessions, and they've accessed this altered level of consciousness, and there's a lot of different activity going on in their brain at certain areas and then less in others. It's the time for actually building those new neural circuitries and kind of
Mhm.
synaptogenesis, right? And it's the same thing with cannabis. And so the more we practice, the better behaviors, the more likely we are. It's so silly. I said to my friend the other day, the best way to stop drinking alcohol is to keep trying to stop drinking alcohol. I said, the best way is to keep trying, right? Because that's the only way you're going to guarantee you're going to eventually stop.
But that's the key to it. Most people are looking for that cure. And there is no cure. It's you, it's your behavior that has to change, and it's a decision. And, I think tools are the way that I look at things like the plants and things that we're talking about, not a cure. Same thing with psychotropic medications. I don't want people to just depend on Xanax to calm down and a mood stabilizer to keep your mood stable or an antidepressant to not be depressed. This is where it's effortful. And this is where meditation is that point you bring up. I can't tell you how often I hear it. Well, that's the goal. If you don't know how to drive and you keep driving off the road, do you just give up, or do you just take the time to figure out, why am I not staying on the road? So it's
right. It's like, I tried to play the guitar the other day, and I wasn't very good, so I just gave it up. It's like, that's not how we succeed at anything, right? So yeah, I'm with you on that, and more things that we can do. Like my friend who's going through this right now, I said, what do you plan on doing? Putting your eye shades on and beautiful music and going up into some other dimension and having a little voice whisper in your ear, stop drinking alcohol, and then you're going to come down and stop drinking it. I'm like, what more has to happen to you than your father passing away from that, or it really, affecting your work or your finances or your diet, your body, all of those type of things. So it's going to be work, but that's why with ketamine, we like to have them work throughout the sessions. And the same thing with cannabis. I always try to have people do like a inventory, like a like journal. Why are you choosing to use cannabis right now? Which product did you use? How did it make you feel? So that they're able to understand a little bit more of their body and cannabis and pick the right product. And I don't want them to be afraid to have multiple products. Yes, everything costs money, but it's nice to be able to know, this is how I feel. This is and take their health into their own hands, right? That's what we do. We empower the patient to say, don't be just a passive patient. It's not, this is your health, not my health. Don't come to me for a reflex prescription, but instead I want to help you cultivate your own health. But I can only do that if you want to actively participate with me. If you want to just sit there and say, I'm addicted and I can't stop, fix it, right? Then that's not going to work.
That's so awesome. I just want to open up the question box here because there are people asking questions, and one of the questions that came up was in your it's long gone, but it says in your day-to-day life, like, what is it that you do like every morning?
Well, usually I take my beautiful kids to school, so I have a boy and a girl. I have really adorable, wonderful, healthy, intelligent, hilarious kids. And so spending time with them is probably the most joy I can have. And, they really are like my entire life. And I'm very grateful to have them. I'm very grateful they're healthy. But just those interactions, I mean, they're just hilarious. The things that they say is just amazing. So my morning usually starts off with them. And I'm an outside person, so I like to get a little bit of exercise in. That's my thing. I'm like I'm not a gym person. I like to I listen to music and I like to do my own exercise. I have a friend that I work out with sometimes where we just do a circuit, and I really like to get into how I feel. I listen to my body a lot, so I like feeling powerful. I like feeling strong, and that to me comes into exercise. That's really what I do. I don't actually meditate. I'm not a yoga type of person. I'm more of I like quiet and music, but I'm not really a meditator. So exercise for me is kind of my release and being with my kids.
Thanks, Mom. She's talking about me, guys. I'm her son, and she takes me to school every day. She thinks I'm hilarious.
The other day, I went to pick up my kid, and the after school lady walks him to me, and I'm like, oh no, what did you do? And the teacher has to walk him to me, and then she goes, he has to wear his mask. If he doesn't wear his mask, I'm like, I know, I tell him all the time, and he's looking at me with those eyes, and I'm like, stop looking at me with those eyes, because I'm gonna laugh in front of the teacher, and I'm supposed to be disciplining you. But they really are.
So here's another question. What is the one thing you'd be really disappointed if you could never experience?
That I've already experienced?
No, that you could never, that if you could not experience it.
But have I experienced it already?
Well, no.
No? Okay.
I mean, you could
Well,
talk about
I
that
don't know
too.
because I've never experienced it, right? That's the whole thing. How can I
But
know
is
if
there
I've
an
never
experience
experienced it?
out there that you would be disappointed? Like, oh man,
Like a
I'll never be
bucket
able to
list.
do that. Or, oh, I hope I could do that. I would be really pissed if I die and didn't do that.
I gotta think about that because
Are you telling me you lived your like most ultimate life already?
no, but I mean, I have like professional goals. I have personal goals. You
Right.
know, like to be honest, a lot of people say, well, if you're a ketamine provider and you haven't really experienced it, then you really should. And I always say, well, usually I'm doing it for a medical condition, not really psycho-spiritual growth. But something like that. I probably would love to experience ketamine eventually, but there's a lot of fear in it because I mean, it's all about setting, and dose, obviously, and I can control the dose very easily. But knowing what I know, I'll probably control the dose too much, So I wouldn't mind having one of those unbelievable, dissociation type of experiences. That would probably be on my bucket list. Yeah, I would like to do something like that.
Here's one, because you just mentioned ketamine, and I just had a thought. I recently just bought a VR headset.
Oh yeah,
I'm wondering what
I've
ketamine.
already tried it on someone. Which
Have
one did you
you?
buy? What'd you buy?
The Oculus 2.
I was gonna that's the one that I was looking at. Yeah. So what do you think?
Uh, I'd like to come over and try it, please.
I've talked to some people about it actually because again it's about the setting, right? So
Right.
that really could be unbelievable. The thing is, the true scientists and physicians would say that's really not necessary. It's like kind of amplifying or guiding your effect, right? Like it's guiding your experience. And the whole
Mhm.
point, I mean, we set an intention and we're supposed to actually be guided by that intention. But a lot of times your mind guides you to where it needs to go. But the VR with a psychedelic to me is very intriguing. And I do think that it would actually be used in the near future since VR is really becoming more and more popular. We're actually doing a VR study for pain management in my practice.
Are you
Wow.
really?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to donate my time, please. Use me as a guinea pig. And
The Oculus is great though. That's a good choice.
yeah, I decided to go with it, and it's been the coolest thing ever. I actually wish I could do this whole meeting on it, but I'd be the only idiot with the sticking
Yeah, but
around.
the
So
problem is, it's like we're already so disconnected, especially with the pandemic, right? Now, when we
Mhm.
bring in VR, people are just going to be able to talk to other people and do other things without any social interaction. We're going to have a lot of socially awkward people walking around from
I
lack of
agree with
experience.
you 1,000% there. I didn't get it to dissociate myself. I actually got it because I wanted to work with 3 screens at once. That was the only thing, and it was cheaper than buying three actual screens. I've actually been more productive. I put everything out, and I can research, and I can type up papers, and I can do stuff, and it's
But whenever you
that.
want, we could really try it out.
Yeah, no, that. Oh, I definitely want to try it out. I also got a meditation app on it,
Okay,
which
cool.
I don't like, but I also found visuals that I think would scare the crap out of me on ketamine,
Well,
and I think I
that's the
want to
thing.
try
You
it.
would have to like really look at the program and what
Right.
they're going to experience before they do, because there could be a lot of fear, which would be an uncomfortable experience.
Oh,
I think
absolutely. That's why I'm trying them out on the sober end, and if not ketamine, then it's going to be 2 or 3 grams of RSO.
Please no. I
yeah.
thought you said you liked
She's like, please don't. In my professional opinion, I really don't recommend it.
You don't want to use all your milligrams up in one day.
You're right. You're right.
But then if he doesn't need it for another week, I don't know,
Yeah, it equals out in the end.
switch to something else.
It's a long time to go without.
I imagine if you have a program that's written and you have the right content, whether it's music, visuals, what have you, and it's set with the right intention in terms of what they want to design, like an application to relax a person or a guided therapy, that would be totally different. I would want to make sure that you don't trigger any person into a panic attack or any dysphoria. And that would be the only reason I would be worried, kind of going back to what Dr. Weiner was saying about us introducing something rather than letting this stuff trigger its own reaction in the person. So we're putting you down a path rather than, if it provided you with a comfortable environment, that's one thing. Like you had like a beautiful serene room or garden, that's fine. But I'm wondering if interference would be a good thing or not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's kind of going against, the point of it, right? The point of it is, let's just see what you access and let's see where your mind leads you. And at the same time, if you've already done that, or if you're in good health, it's definitely something to try just as an experience. I would say more than anything, where you set the setting. What do you want it to look like? What's your happy place? What looks beautiful for you? The same thing with music. Sometimes the playlist makes people scared. It's too, like, there's some music that's too with drums, and it's too, like,
Right.
it makes, or sometimes it's like an orchestra type of thing that a lot of people don't like. So finding the right playlist is also really important.
Yeah, and I believe that's all stuff that you should do beforehand.
Definitely.
Like that again, we always talk about intention on here, and and I joke around and I say like, oh, that this one time I did RSO, and these are all true stories. But I'm a highly trained professional, ladies and gentlemen. Do not do what I do.
Who trained you?
And I'm you know what? I'm like one of those like Jedi masters. I just come out and I'm just born to be the one, So that's me. But no, but
The black and yellow circle is a
Now
given.
he let his hair down.
yeah, I had to let it go. I like to look like Howard Stern when I do my shows.
He went from the weekend to
I
Howard
look like a pineapple before, and it wasn't. I'm not an artist. Forget it, and forget what I said earlier. I'm not the Weekend. I try to fool you all. But yeah, no, I think it's important to do all your own research beforehand, before your intent to do some kind of psychedelic anything.
But the problem with that is a lot of times people intellectualize things too much, right? So they'll read about something, and it's me, that I'm the perfect example. I read about things, but I also witness people going through it, right? So people just read about the other people's experiences. They don't experience it for themselves. They think they know. I did a ketamine on a patient yesterday I've known for years, and she told me, oh, I've done mushrooms, don't worry. And I'm like, no, it's not like that. This is a therapeutic environment. We have a goal, you have an intention, you're in my office, there's a playlist. So I do intramuscular, and then 30 minutes later I'll do a second injection sometimes. And when I went to do the second injection, she was like, dude. I'm like, really? She goes, this is ridiculous. I had no idea. And she was like quoting a lot of the, like Albert Huxley, like she was quoting a lot of these people who, all the different things that she knows about psychedelics and what it's going to do. And she was like, I can't even believe how good I feel right now. I have no pain. The thing that showed up for her was something that she had no intention of seeing. It was really a very unbelievable experience. She couldn't even believe how good she felt. And that's what it is. They come into the office, they look so depressed, so unhappy, or they have those like eyes of, fear. And then I finish, and like the whole body's relaxed. They're smiling. It's amazing. And they want, you want it to continue. And that's why we do a few sessions in a short period of time. And then once they even speak with, their therapist, it's even more developed, and then they work on a plan. But this is really, going to transform medicine. And cannabis was really the way that it all started, the way that we're talking about education, getting rid of the stigma. And then, of course, because it's a Schedule 1, we're very limited. But, the same way that we have ketamine is kind of the prototype now for a lot of the other psychedelics, is kind of how we have our medical states, that's kind of leading the way, that we're still able to do it, even though we can't do research unless we have that Schedule 1 license. So it's nice. And all of it is really personalized medicine, going against the way that we were taught in school, which is just based on, a chemical imbalance type of conversation. So it's nice that even physicians are getting frustrated with the fact that the patients aren't getting better. More and more people are saying, I've been to 5 doctors and nobody knows what's wrong with me. Well, clearly there's a problem with that. And clearly we're missing something, or even with cannabis, the fact that it took so long to start teaching this in medical school, that we have an endocannabinoid system, is really sad. I have palliative care fellows who finish their fellowship and know nothing about cannabis, and they're dealing with end of life patients, which is the place that I see cannabis and psychedelics. That's an easy one. People trying to find meaning at their end of lives. They're trying not to suffer in pain, for sleep, things like that, obviously. But finding meaning is very important. A lot of these medications can do that because they're in this body and their mind that is very defeated, and they have no hope. And then taking a medicine like this can send them away for a little bit, or allow them to connect in a different way. It's really very amazing, and it should be done with guidance and supervision, of course. And more studies will come out that will help physicians with protocols, which is needed.
Well, just looking at what the indigenous cultures who we study that have used psychedelics, it's always up to the shaman, and the shaman creates this intent. He creates this whole setting. He gives that person the substance, and he's with them through it. And in frequent cases, they're using it at the same time. So ultimately, it creates that. And this is what Stan Groff talks about, that psycho-spiritual experience. When they have that crisis in their life, it gives them that hope. And a lot of articles. I remember we did a webinar, and you did a presentation on end of life and mushrooms. I think it was psilocybin.
Right.
And looking at just the research volumes of it exist. Johns Hopkins, this is what they're talking about. So having choices at that point, at that end stage in life, is so important.
Yeah, no, it really is, and at the same time, people are it's like the cannabis use disorder, right? The other side of the coin is that they say, when you've got the message, hang up the phone, right? The people who are doing this too often, if it's so powerful and so profound, this can't be something that's done every weekend. You know what I mean? And it really does need guidance if you want it to last. That's the way I look at it. So these are very safe, and people are doing them, but they have to change their mindset about why they're doing them. And then, and again, it's basically to find meaning, or
Right.
to really, to feel better in a way that can last. That's the most important thing right now, especially after the pandemic. I mean, the amount of people suffering with anxiety and depression and chronic pain has only increased.
Clearly. And I think understanding that you have something that it can be just life-changing for a person, and looking at certain states that have decriminalized it. And I know that you've been active here, I think Hallandale, and what I've talked to the Psychedelic Club of Orlando, they're trying to do it in Orlando as well, to get it decriminalized there, so that you can use psilocybin within the city. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that's going to happen anytime soon?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is we're having the conversation, right? So even if a bill does, is written and it doesn't pass, it's still allowed for education, because these medications will be FDA approved in 2 years, let's say. Psilocybin for depression, MDMA for anxiety or PTSD, let's say. It was actually just an MDMA anxiety study that came out. But in general, it'll be approved where you have to see the physician, get the medication, everything's done in the office. And again, therapy has to go along with it. And that's what people forget. They say, well, in 1 to 3 sessions of these large doses of psychedelics, their lives greatly improve, and they find meaning and they feel better. But that's with real therapy, right? Like, not, real structured therapy from real, trained therapists. So I think that what we're hoping to do is just start the conversation, so that when things are actually legal and even FDA approved, or even if before that it's just decriminalized, people, when I say I'm using ketamine in my patients, they say, oh, the horse tranquilizer and the K-holes, So now that we passed those 2 things, okay, let's move on, right? So it's kind of the same thing with this conversation is okay, mushrooms, I used to do that in college, whatever people's normal responses are, and now trying to give them an understanding of why it's going to work and what it's doing to the brain and the body, and how to incorporate it into their lives and integrate it is very important. So it's really having the conversation, even if it doesn't pass. But there's so many, you should have Dustin on the show, Mr. Psychedelic Love, because there's so many options. We can talk about decriminalization. We could talk about medicalization before legalization. There's ways of creating this bill that we can make it so that you have to have a specific medical condition and go to the doctor, or it's just everything is psilocybin's decriminalized, or we have treatment centers for this. So there's like DC just passed theirs is different than Oregon. So every state has their own that they're working on, and Dustin's working very hard for Florida, and hopefully it's just creating more education and awareness of why things aren't working and what's to potentially come.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle Weiner. Let's give her a big round of applause because we could have not done this show without her.
That is true.
Lonnie could have. I
Goodness.
couldn't. I'm the dumb ass. Guys, thank you guys for joining. This is Ganja Beach Medical Center. That is Dr. Michelle Weiner, Dr. Lonnie, Super Gabe Osborne. I'm no one. Don't even remember my name. That's not even relevant. Anyway, well, time is up apparently. Make sure to go to Ganja Beach Media and get your book, your cooking book by Chef Mary. Let's see if we can put that
How
up on
can
the
people
screen.
reach Dr. Weiner if they want to continue their work with Dr. Weiner is what I'm wondering.
So my website has lots of information, lots of articles, everything about some of the studies I'm doing, cannabis, ketamine type of information, and it's drmichelleweiner.com. And my office number is 305-974-5533. But I have a few offices, Miami, Hollywood, and Boca. This was fun, guys. Thanks for having
That
me.
was
And
so much
you have a
fun.
lot
We
of
hope you
talent.
join us again.
Thank you for your time, and I hope you have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful week and a happy holiday. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you
Same to
today.
you.
Bye-bye.
Hi,
guys.
Bye.